I think a great time to transition over to Dean Herdt, and let's get a different perspective since Dean's the director of Capgemini's service supply chain practice. He'll bring a different perspective. He certainly has a lot of real world examples and experiences to share in helping organizations solve some major service supply chain challenges. So Dean, let's turn it over to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Bradley. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Happy to be here today. My background in service parts management actually started shortly out of college, though I didn't know what service parts management was. I was working for a suburban Atlanta school district that had just recently, thanks to the benefit of the Georgia lottery system, put a bunch of computers in each and every classroom, and nobody knew how to fix them. So I was blessed with the task of maintaining about 1,600 computers across 25 different schools. And service parts management for me meant looking in the box and seeing how few keyboards or mice or hard drives we had. And as far as data tracking goes, we had a very large whiteboard that we put stickers and dots on to indicate our demand history. Come a long way since then, fortunately. Tools and technology have evolved, and while I certainly didn't have the benefit of the groundbreaking experience that Ed had, I got in late in the game, but fortunately that experience taught me the benefit of proper spare parts management and making sure the right parts were in the right place at the right time, because there's nothing worse than a school administrator or a bunch of students complaining about the fact that they can't access their computer. So wanted to avoid that at all cost. But then again, cost was also an issue. And from the very beginning, seeing that balance between restrictive budgets and customer service brought into my mind the complexity of making sure that we give the right benefit to each of the stakeholders involved in a spare parts management scenario. I've had the good fortune of implementing some spare parts management solutions over the last 20 years and have been with Capgemini doing that for the last 5. And throughout that experience, throughout that entire journey, it is amazing to me how the entire industry has evolved from a software perspective. And it also amazes me how frequently the level of maturity that I see in many of these large organizations reflects that first experience that I had sitting in a cage in central stores in suburban Atlanta, trying to plan out enough mice, keyboards, and hard drives to support the entire school system. It's a low level of maturity that a lot of organizations still stick to, because the spare parts management groups have evolved, as Ed was talking about in the beginning, mostly from ERP planning. The same mentality is carried over into those organizations. So in the 3 major areas of spare parts management: forecasting, optimizing inventory, and supply planning, we've relied on those same MRP-based techniques. In other words, using historical data and statistical analysis of that data, simple basic algorithms in order to predict the future. Inventory optimization has just been very reactive and based on like my original techniques with the boxes of inventory back to the school system, taking a look at what I have and just seeing that there's a certain number of days of supply on hand, and then reacting to that in a supply planning perspective by ordering whatever is necessary only when it happens. It's a very firefighting mode to go through service parts management in that, highly reactive. And yet some very large organizations, and I'm not going to throw company names out here, but some large, high-tech, very innovative organizations are still in the somewhat of the dark ages of planning their spare parts in that particular area. Even their tools, the tools and technology are spreadsheets, hand-gathered data, hand-grown reports that don't focus on the automation and the innovation that is available with any good spare parts management tool. The result is error prone, it's time intensive, and certainly as the organizations grow, it might be okay in the beginning to just get started, but it's certainly not scalable. So what we have seen in more and more organizations is that we can progress from low to medium to high and get a lot of value after by implementing any spare parts management solution. And what evolves is the process, the capability, and the outcomes as the tools and technology evolve, and data supports that as well. So with respect to forecasting, while statistical and historical forecasting may have been just enough in the beginning, now we have more data available. Causals are available. We can predict the kind of large-scale schedule maintenance that happens, and we can composite all these different forecasting methods together. Focus on the schedule maintenance bit for a moment. In a lot of industries, that schedule maintenance is critical. Think about aerospace and defense, think about automotive, and for that matter, anything with a large scale asset that requires recurring maintenance. Historical tools just simply react, and we don't predict when that maintenance is necessary. So being able to schedule that maintenance through a maintenance bill of materials was a critical next step for a lot of organizations in forecasting. From inventory optimization perspective, rather than just being reactive and adhering to a days of supply perspective, we see that progression towards optimization, but still only at the single item optimization, strictly done by fill rate, and without necessarily balancing the cost and benefit of one part versus another. But at least now we're adhering to certain policies that go beyond just the, oh no, the box is empty, let's go get more reactive type of inventory optimization. From supply planning, we've gone beyond just that trigger-based method where we hit a certain level and then react and order more. Now we can stage the orders out over a long period of time and also gather inventory together and manage pools so that not every location needs to stock a part for a single that is lower volume and higher cost. We can perhaps keep that at a central store or regional location. So more innovation is happening to reduce the cost and reduce the overall investment of optimizing that inventory. And this is where we get into the next stage of tools and technology that we've been talking about here. There's automation, there's integrated data that is updated on a frequent basis. We have full visibility to our supply chain. We're not managing on spreadsheets, so we're scalable and we can do so through a user-friendly interface. And workflow management now becomes a thing. And you see the roles start to evolve here with people as well. Now we have more diverse roles and responsibilities when it comes to planning the spare parts and managing those. In some cases, the role between a planner and a buyer has now split. A demand forecaster and an asset manager has now split as people become more specialized in their area. But the final step in really bringing that supply chain, the service supply chain to maturity, is exactly the tools and tech that we've been talking about here. So instead of just causals being based on what we know from a data source, we can get those in real time. Every flight on a commercial aircraft now generates a terabyte of data. We can know exactly how much stress each part experienced, how many flight hours or cycles it experienced, and report that back in real time. So forecasting becomes, instead of just a bucketized month by month response to data inputs, the data analytics give us the ability to be much more predictive with the failures we are going to experience with those connected devices. Inventory optimization, instead of just being fill rate driven, gives us the opportunity to do marginal analysis, not only at one part in one location, but across the entire supply chain. You heard Michael talk about multi-echelon, multi-indenture optimization. That is now a possibility because of the type of tools and technology we have available. Supply planning, instead of just going beyond reactive and firefighting, or even proactive and being able to time phase, now we can do much more efficient exception-based management. We can plan to a multi-period budget report and optimize to a budget with various constraints, none of which were capable in the beginning. And then we can have the automation and intelligence also within supply planning to identify opportunities to disassemble old assets and reuse them, to predict the not only the repair of assets, but also the components that would support repair, and pre-position those repair components and optimize that all to a budget while still meeting our service level metrics that we need to. The tools and the technology have highly advanced, and I appreciate Michael sharing the analysis of the tools that are out there. It has moved far beyond the old days of spreadsheet. It has moved far beyond just a slick user interface. We now have AI and ML capability to be far more predictive. We have the large scale services of a cloud that allow us to do that heavy lifting and heavy processing of all of this data. The innovation of the tools has grown along with the innovation of the data, and there's so much more capable. Yet still so many organizations sit in the low to medium in a lot of these metrics, and having the tools such as Servigistics available to them has been one of Capgemini's driving objectives, is to move them from the left and the right, left to the right. And as they do so, there's a great number of benefits. We see part revenue increases, we see availability increase, inventory is reduced, and overall, just the mere implementation of a mature spare parts management tool, even if not all of these capabilities that we just identified were leveraged, gets some great results. And typically we see an ROI within the first 6 to 9 months after implementation. And in some cases, in multi-phased implementations, I experienced this with a life sciences organization where it was staged between 3 geographic regions. By the time we reached the end of the third stage, the whole implementation was already paid for by the savings gained by just the first stage, the first region that we deployed. So in almost every case, just simply moving from the left to the right gives you that immediate benefit of part availability increase and happier customers, reduced inventory, and overall freight and handling cost as well. So there's tremendous opportunity for implementing these tools, and I appreciate the fact that, Ed, you were at the groundbreaking beginning of that to make it a possible opportunity for myself to participate in this innovation. And Michael, thank you for your analysis of the market of the tools. For me personally, I very much enjoy bringing this value to the organizations, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it here. Thank you.